Just want to welcome everybody to HCAR's Legislative Breakfast. It's kind of a breakfast without the food, I guess. I'm Allison Del Zappo. I'm chair of the HCAR Ledge Committee. I want to thank everyone for coming so early. I think this is the earliest I've had to do anything lately. I want to thank our board of directors, my fellow Ledge Committee members, all the HCAR staff, and 2020 RPAC investors for making this event possible and for keeping everything going even during the pandemic. I also want to thank everybody that's in attendance from our General Assembly, and I'm sorry, I'm looking at a list just so I don't miss anybody. Senator Guy Gazzoni, Senator Clarence Lamb, Senator Katie Fry Hester, Delegate Vanessa Atterbury, Delegate Eric Ebersol was on here a second ago.
He's back.
Oh, welcome back. Delegate Trent Kittleman, Delegate Jen Terrassa, and Delegate Courtney Watson. And then and there we have Delegate Terry Hill, who's joined us as well. Let me make sure I didn't miss anybody in the pictures.
Good morning.
I'm going to rename you, Terry, so hold tight. Okay, just renamed you. And then, hi, Jessica, Delegate Jessica Feldmark. You're good on your name. I still don't know who the blank.
Shane Pender.
Okay, Shane, are you labeled as Lisa May right now?
I have no idea. Oh, I guess maybe I am, yes.
Okay, I'm changing your name right now.
Thank you.
Okay, there we go. All right, I think we have this all fixed. All right, and then Delegate Shane Pendergrass has joined us. And then from the county, we have 2020 Council Chair Deb Young and Council Member David Youngman, also a fellow Realtor member. And I believe that's all we have logged on at the moment. So we're going to kind of do our program a little bit differently today. It's going to be a little more fun than boring, or, you know, you're not going to have to talk too much.
Are you saying we're boring?
I'm saying
Gosh, she wasn't referring to you and I.
I'm saying
she's trying to make up for the lack of food.
No, I'm kidding. No, it's always good. It's just going to be more fun because I know you have a lot of serious events later. So before we start our program today, I just wanted to touch on some of our Realtor legislative priorities that we have for this year. One of them is, you know, everybody's talking about housing opportunity and affordability, especially when closing the racial and ethnic gaps, home ownership rates. We believe that we have a number of opportunities to start this process through tax policy and financial assistance, increasing housing supply through the Housing Opportunities Master Plan and HOCO by Design, and then rethinking housing types like accessory dwelling units, maybe reuse of commercial spaces, especially after the pandemic, depending on, you know, how much space is available in those areas. Also addressing rental concerns, eviction process measures, and then also how can we help, you know, the homeowners of those rental properties as well, who have had to continue to pay their mortgage while struggling with tenants being able to pay their rent. And then strengthening Maryland's broadband coverage for the area. So those are going to be some of our topics for this coming year, some of our focus. And then obviously the fallout from COVID, the pandemic, what lies for us in the future once the moratorium is lifted on foreclosures and rental evictions and things like that. It's been a busy real estate year, amazingly. So keeping some part of the economy going, I suppose. So again, we're going to keep our program a little fun today. It's called Win, Ledger, Draw. We're not going to be keeping score or anything like that. And we'll be easy on you all. So we're going to get started with the first segment. It's called Odds. And so we're going to ask all of our officials to rate the likelihood of certain legislative events happening, along with a short explanation if you choose. So, for instance, what are the odds that Senator Gazzoni will answer a question on the budget? And then somebody will give a rating based on that. Okay, so we're going to get started. So if you want to answer it, just raise your hand. I'll see you probably in the picture of some sort. So odds that the federal government will approve a new round of stimulus funding. Delegate Hill. I got Delegate Hill, Gazzoni, and Young. So let's start with Delegate Hill.
It's about 95% that whether before or after the new Congress comes in.
Okay. Okay.
She qualified that. That's an error.
That's what the rules can't be changed afterwards. or
She
else
qualified that.
Change the question.
Who's parliamentarian for this event?
You
I
are.
am. Delegate Gazzoni?
Who's he?
I don't know. Never heard of him.
Near 100, and if it isn't, it is going to put me into a heart attack if it isn't, because it drives everything right now.
Councilwoman Young, you had your hand
I
up.
said, I was going to say 100%, but I was going to qualify it like Delegate Hill. I was going to say 100%. I don't know when, but yeah, I think it's 100% that we're going to get some more funding. And I agree with Senator Gazzoni. If we don't get some more funding, we're going to be in trouble. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Councilman Youngman?
I'm going to go 100%.
Just kidding.
Wow.
Great.
I just, with no qualifiers, the election's over, everybody, we don't know what the number will be and who it'll be directed to, but a stimulus it's very general. They're going to pass something.
Okay, great. So we're all.
I
in
think the
agreement.
question for this group also is how much is going to be state and local support, right? That's what we're all waiting, really, what that number is.
Mhm.
Well, we don't know what the total number is going to be yet.
Right.
So,
Right, all the numbers are up in the air, but I think we're all kind of waiting to see how much help the state will get.
Another important number is the date.
Yeah, I think it's pretty darn low, at least at this point, that we're going to see direct state money. And state money that is what was in the CARES Act at $1.3 billion for Maryland, the flex dollars. And that's what we all would like to see. The good news is that some of the other stimulus things, which end up like unemployment insurance, at least from the standpoint of the state, that they get, we get tax revenues from that also because it's taxable. Now, you can argue that it shouldn't be, but it is. And that's one of the ways that we've actually ended up being in better shape than we thought we were going to be in.
Guy, by what time in the year, by what point in the winter do you have to know it's coming and how much it's going to be before you can really make a reasonable budget, before you can really rely on it being there?
Well, I think as long as we get it by March,
Or
quite
at least
frankly.
know what it's going to be.
Yeah, have some sense of it. We've already got stuff, planned out for different possibilities. It's not like it's, totally outside the realm. I think the big news actually next week is on December 15th, we get the final word on revenue projections for the last one before we go into the state. And it looks like they're going to actually even be a little better than we thought they were going to be. Maryland has been in an amazing shape comparatively and shockingly better than we could have expected.
Right.
It doesn't mean that it'll always be that way. The CARES stuff, and as I said, really played a big role, both from revenues that came in that could be taxed and also revenues that came in directly to the state. So we got a double boost, if you will, in the midst of all of this.
So Guy, would you say that that the caution that was advised early on about not making draconian cuts and laying off state workers and all of those things was wise advice to just wait and see as I think the
Yeah, it was incredibly wise from my perspective. We would have been dealing with fallout problems associated with that, including having workers applying for more unemployment benefits. I mean, it just absolutely.
If you don't mind me chiming in real quick, just another odds thing that just ties to this, and we had a couple questions from the audience. David, control your dogs. What are the odds that the state and local governments will need to consider new taxes and fees due to the pandemic? I mean, we just saw a transfer increase, obviously, in Howard County this year. Does anybody want to chime in on that?
I mean, first off, I think it's highly likely on your odds questions that we will override the governor's vetoes of the revenue measures we passed last go around. So that'll be helpful. I guess, as I say all the time, and it's consistent with what we were just talking about, we can't look at budgets in any one year. It has to be looked over a period of time, because that's how reality is, right? Through this pandemic so far, we've been dealing with the 20 budget, the 21 budget, and now the 22 budget, all of which are intimately connected. And the impact that occurs in any one of those years also has impacts in other years. So, and we're already looking at the 23 budget, if you can believe it. So we're trying to keep a grand sense of all of this. As things enter or leave the system, if you will, in other words, enter or leave, either we get stimulus, we don't, we get a vaccine at certain points in time. All of those things are factors that go into it. So the real question, the real answer to your question is, I don't think at the moment there is the need to be thinking about that, but it could change fairly quickly based on what we hear from the federal government.
Okay. Does anybody else want to add on to that, or I can hop on to another? Okay. What are the?
David has his hand up.
Go ahead. Oh, I ignore him. So we're
She ignores me.
move along.
Just a quick perspective though, because we went through this at the county level, and maybe it's because so many of us on this meeting lived through 2008, 2010. You know, back when we were doing our budgets last year, we had no idea what this was going to look like. Think about how much more we know now than we did in April or May. I mean, we could have had 5 times as many cases. We could have not had the therapeutics. This vaccine could be not on the way. I mean, our hospitalization numbers are what they were in the middle of April. But we kind of have this sense that we're not in this dire situation because the vaccine's around the corner. What if that would have taken 3 years? So, you know,
I don't think,
I was tough on the budget this year because we just didn't know. And now that we find ourselves maybe in a little bit of a better situation, a little more optimistic, we could always catch up on things. Now, we didn't have to do draconian cuts like the state, but, you know, in fairness to anybody that was very concerned during the last budget, you just didn't know what was going to happen. So.
Can I chime in for a second? I think there's still a lot that we don't know. I think there's actually worse days ahead of us than behind us, unfortunately, which I know is news that nobody wants to hear. So, you know, I think our numbers are where they were back in March and April in terms of hospitalizations, but we're preparing to see, you know, 5,000 hospitalizations a day. And that will crush the healthcare system if we continue in the current trajectory. So we are concerned. And, you know, so far we've weathered okay, but that doesn't mean that, you know, that will continue to be the case. And I think there's still a lot of unknowns. We're only probably, you know, at the top of the 5th inning here.
Yeah.
What about the vaccine that's going to be coming before the turn of the year?
Well, and
we're not going to have enough vaccines for healthcare workers even before the end of the year.
Yeah, but based on what Dr. Lamb just said, then any sort of judgment on whether or not draconian cuts were good, bad, or will even be necessary in the future, I'm a little more optimistic, but based on the sense that we're still in the 5th inning, who knows what decisions were right, wrong, and what we still need to do to protect those, you know, 3-4 years out.
I think that's fair. I think we don't know what's coming along. So I think we just we'll still need to play it by ear. But, there's still a lot of challenges ahead.
Yeah, which leads me to my next odds question. What are the odds that Maryland will return to phase 1 before the end of 2020? We only have a couple weeks left, but what do you guys foresee? Delegate Kittleman?
Before the end of 2020, did you say?
Yeah. Yes.
0.
Does anybody else think we're going to head into phase 1 at all?
I'm going to say, oh, you don't
Okay.
have to recognize me. I didn't realize
It
that.
just pops on.
Okay. I don't know if we'll be in phase 1 or not. We should be in phase 1. We're in big trouble. We're not really at the point of taking this as seriously, I think, as we should. I'm very concerned, frankly.
I want to add to that, and I'm going to, defer to Senator Lamb if I'm off on my perception, because he's certainly a lot closer to this and has a lot more understanding of the data, et cetera, from a public health standpoint. But I think it's great that we have a vaccine, to Delegate Kittleman's thing, but there's a lot that's not known, right? So we don't know how long the immunity from the vaccine will last. We certainly don't know how long. We have projections of how long it's going to take to get enough vaccine into the population to get so-called herd immunity. We don't have more than 2 months follow-up of side effects. So early side effects are one thing, but even things with vaccines like Guillain-Barré syndrome, which some of you may be familiar with, is not uncommon following vaccines. And often there are complications that we don't even recognize as being related to vaccines until we're further out. There are issues about liability where, because of the urgency, even the issues of whether the vaccine court will cover any complications. And the reason there's a vaccine court that was founded in the 1980s is because there can be life-altering complications from vaccines, okay? And the way the court works is as long as the vaccine is recommended for pediatrics, which right now we're not doing with this one because the kids haven't been tested, okay, then if you have a complication, rather than try and sue the manufacturer, which is we don't want to do because so they have immunity, you go to the court and they give you a settlement. Well, this isn't going to be recommended for children, so it doesn't fall into that. So when you talk about effects on the community, effects on the economy, there's a lot more than just saying we got a vaccine. That's I think it's important. And no one's talking about it so much publicly because we're really trying to just get everyone hyped up. But from a clinical standpoint, I'm all about informed consent. And informed consent means that we have to know what the potential downsides are, even if the overwhelming need is for us to roll this thing out.
Well, and I'm more optimistic about the vaccine than the doctor who probably knows more. But I see the choice of not taking it and the choice of taking it. And I don't see that's a very fair choice. I think that if we want to start our lives again, and I think most of us at this point do, we will be taking the vaccine. And I have pretty good confidence that it's going to be pretty safe. Actually, my concerns have more to do with how's the distribution going to go? How's the supply chain going to go? Are we actually going to get to the points that we would like to be at when we think we could be at them? Or are things going to go wrong? I think there's just a lot more steps in the process. What's more, we have the surge upon the surge upon the surge. We have the surge that was happening. We have the surge from Thanksgiving on top of that. We have the surge that we're going to have from Christmas on top of that. So I'm back to Senator Lamb's point that right now we're looking at the hospital stresses. So I think that we want to be optimistic and we want to do what we can to move forward. But at the same time, there are things that can go wrong.
Delegate Youngman, you needed to chime in. Thanks, Delegate Pendergrass.
Thanks for the promotion. Just to kind of get us back on topic a little bit, it seems like what we're hearing is there's still a lot of unknowns. And this thing could go one way or the other, and it doesn't matter if there's a stimulus, how much it is, how much is for municipalities. We still have a lot of unknowns. And we're going to need to be really careful, both at the state and county level, in how we budget this year.
I want to say one more thing.
Sorry. We had a question from one of our attendees. We've mentioned a couple of different types of stimulus already, direct payments to state and locals. What type of stimulus would help you all the most, or help our residents the most?
Direct.
Well, help us the most could be direct to the state, but then it's up to the state to decide how it's going to get to the people. I mean, direct stimulus directly to people takes us government folks out of the way. So it depends on, I hate to say the definition of us. Is us the state? Is us the membership, in their private lives? Is it as realtors?
I think it's all of that, right? So I think
Right.
they're talking about direct to the state and locals, which I think, well, there's need everywhere, whether it's state and local government to be able to continue essential functions, programs, and services. It's also hopefully direct to people, right? There were direct checks that went to people, back in the spring. I think that's may or may not be in the mix depending on the final dollar amount. So I think everyone needs help, whether it's constituents and people, or also, to be able to carry on essential functions of state and local government. So, and I apologize, I have to jump in like 2 minutes because we are planning for the vaccine landing at Hopkins next week. And so to Delegate Pendergrass's point, this process is really complex. It is really, really incredibly complex, even in the healthcare facility. So there's going to be a lot of planning that needs to take place to distribute this in the community. But I'll have to hop off at like 8:30. So thank you.
I
Thank
want
you.
to add, just so you know, I understand Delegate Hill's concern with the vaccine, but it's important to me to get a message out, which is that my husband and I, who are seniors, both tried to be in a vaccine test because we were willing to do that because we think it's that important, and we were not selected. But my son, I believe, has been selected. So we have enough confidence in where the science is to think that it's important enough not only to take the vaccine, but to be willing to be subjects in one of these tests.
Thank you, Shane.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to move along. What we're going to do is I'm going to ask each of you to highlight one issue or one topic that will be big for you in 2021. That's like one of your main initiatives. And then we'll finish with a little fun round after that. Senator Lamb, Senator Lamb, do you want to start off since you'll be heading out here in a second?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. And thanks to HCAR and Allison and Lisa for organizing this. Appreciate it. I know, just briefly, I know Lisa has been really helpful with a local bill that we had last year to make sure that people that are purchasing property in Howard County are aware that the school boundary lines could change. And so, we've been able to work with that with HCAR and all of you to have that included as addendums without the need for legislation. So, thank you for your cooperation there. I'll just touch on one issue briefly, and it's not my specific issue, but I know it's coming through our committee and also concern to, I think our committee, but also concerned to a lot of folks here is, funding for public schools, particularly when it comes to the fact that a lot of school systems are not seeing attendance where it was, right? So with virtual learning, there's obviously concerns of, attendance, so to speak, on these virtual learning sessions. Some funding to school systems is tied to attendance rates. And so, given this virtual learning environment, we want to make sure that we try to the extent possible, support our public school systems. And so, I think there's a lot of concern there. We've heard that from the board, from others as well. And we hope to be able to continue working on that issue. So, more to come on that. But certainly with everything going on in the pandemic and a lot of uncertainty, as Councilman Young would also mention too, I think, we want to keep our eyes and ears on the ground with all of you. And so feel free to reach out to us because there are a lot of moving pieces here, although I'm sure you'll touch on this later. Session won't look like what it usually looks like. So there's some challenges inherent to this 2021 session as well that, we're going to have to work through, and appreciate your willingness to work through that with us. So thank you.
Thank you. So what I'm going to do from here is I will just say your name, and then if you want to chime in with one of your initiatives, that will be great. I'm going to spin it up a little bit since, let's start with Senator Hester. Katie?
Good morning, and thank you, Allison, for having us today. It's really hard to pick just one. I think I sit on the same committee as Senator Lamb, Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs. So education is, of course, super important this year. Over the interim, I've had the opportunity to chair our Small Business Caucus. And so I think that caucus will come forward with a series of bills that will aim to help to support small business, everything from reasonable liability protection to looking at the unemployment trust fund, to additional technical support and direct relief. And so I think it's really important as we look towards recovery, that we protect the small businesses, particularly in the industries that have been really, really hard hit, and that we support them in going forward in a safe manner.
Great, thank you. Let's Delegate Atterbury.
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
So one of the main things that I'll be working on is police reform. So if you don't know, I'm vice chair of the Judiciary Committee, but I had the opportunity to chair the House's Police Reform and Accountability Work Group that the Speaker announced on May 30th. And about a few weeks ago, we made our recommendations. We had 22 recommendations, very strong recommendations that I think if we can move forward and get past the House and past the General Assembly as a whole, Maryland actually will be in the lead in terms of police reform for the entire country, quite frankly. And so they're being drafted now into one bill, but we will also hear a significant amount of other police legislation outside of what the work group worked on. So I know that that is going to consume a lot of our time in judiciary, and it's a priority for the House. And I also am hoping and confident and hoping that the Senate will come along. We have the votes in the House to override the governor's veto of a bill I worked on for a couple years that we passed last year that would require background checks for long guns, rifles and shotguns. And that means that all guns in the state of Maryland would require a background check. Right now, during the pandemic, domestic violence incidents have increased, mental health issues have increased, suicides, and all those long guns, rifles, and shotguns are used in all of those situations. So that's just even amped up the need for the background check. So those are two of my most significant priorities moving into the 2021 session.
Great, thank you. Let's Delegate Tarasa.
Yeah, hi, thank you.
Hi.
So I'm on environment and transportation, as many of you know, and so we've been looking primarily at this point at the climate crisis and also addressing eviction prevention issues. So I have a number of climate or environmental bills, but probably more relevant to this group is eviction prevention. There will probably be a significant package of bills related to that, I believe. And I have one, although it turns out somebody else also has one, so I'm not sure whether I'll be filing it, but that will help reform a failure to pay rent process, requiring landlords to give notice in a grace period before filing in court so that we don't have quite so many going directly to court. A lot of people don't know that. You guys probably may know, but a lot of people don't know that the day your rent is late, landlord can file and bring you straight to court. And giving a 5 or 10 day grace period, I think will be a huge relief given the crisis that we're in now.
Okay, thank you. Delegate Feldmark.
Good morning, thank you. So I serve on the Ways and Means Committee, and one of the things that I think is a top priority for our committee and for the the General Assembly as a whole is the override, veto override for the blueprint for Maryland's future, making sure that we get the blueprint back on track, and with it, the Built to Learn school construction funding, which we desperately need, not only in Howard County, but throughout the state. So I think the pandemic has really highlighted some of the existing inequities in our education system, and unfortunately really exacerbated some of those inequities. So that is something we are definitely going to need to take another close look at. And another area that is in the Ways and Means Committee, and actually one of the subcommittees I serve on, is election law. And so I think we have a lot of lessons to build on from this pandemic election experience. And I think a lot of good opportunity to increase voter access and ease of voting. So I'm hopeful we'll make some significant progress there. I will once again be introducing legislation to reform our public campaign financing at the state level, and looking at some possible further enabling for local level public campaign financing as well. So those are a couple.
Great, thank you. Delegate Ebersol?
Yeah, thank you guys for setting this up. I start off by echoing what Delegate Feldmark said about the blueprint. It is a huge policy change, which is designed to compare Maryland in the near future with some of the world-class education systems we've seen in other countries that we aspire to, and we're gonna have to revisit it. We will certainly have to take a look at some of the funding streams that it requires to make sure that we are, as Councilman Youngman points out, in a transitional phase about budgets, and make sure that what we're asking for is just as reasonable as it was before. The larger problem with COVID has created quite an issue for us in education. I chair the Early Childhood Subcommittee in Ways and Means, and I'm also on the Education Subcommittee. And we're seeing a number of problems. The most significant is the exacerbation of some of the achievement gaps that already existed but have become worse between students, especially those in special needs communities, English learners, in areas of high concentration of poverty, just sometimes because of access, sometimes because of adaptability to online learning. We are seeing, we're sensing really, and we get a very strong sense, we've had a lot of briefings, that the gaps are getting wider. It's going to fall to us to make sure that we set up systems to, first of all, make teachers better able to handle online instruction, training them better. They had to pivot very quickly in March and April. And they've gotten much better, but not many of them were formally trained in that, but also to create what has a more formal name, basically out of school tutoring and out of school remediation programs to help students catch back up, perhaps surpass where their gaps were before, but bring themselves back up to level, so that indeed we regain some of the losses and maybe make some of the progress that we so deeply hoped for. On the budget level, Maryland has spoken and said that they would like us to be able to gamble on sporting events. And it will be up to us to set up a structure whereby we protect consumers who are betting there, but also realize as much revenue as we possibly can from the companies that will be actually providing that. And that should begin to help with budget problems.
Great, thank you. Delegate Courtney Watson?
Thank you. Good morning. I will say that the top of our priority list for Senator Katie Hester and myself is continuing to bring funding back to Howard County for some of our capital projects, including, most importantly, the Safe and Sound Plan for flood mitigation in Ellicott City. In addition to that, I will be doing some business support bills that will be geared towards restaurants and helping restaurants have as many paths to viability as possible by extending the ability to provide takeout alcohol with prepared food. In addition, we will be trying to extend the ability for liquor stores to deliver. Both of those rights were given by Governor Hogan during the pandemic. And finally, I'll be working on some consumer protection bills with regard to insurance and telematics.
Great, thank you. Delegate Pendergrass.
Thank you for having us all here this morning. I think that probably the single biggest bill we're going to be dealing with this year will be about health disparities. I think it's been an issue historically, but I think that this pandemic has caused it to become front and center, in part because many of our essential workers are minorities, and we're seeing the minority community being so much worse impacted by this pandemic. So I think that's one of, it's not my bill, it's my vice chairman, Delegate Pena Melnick, who's worked so hard on this for years, but it's her bill, and I think that that's going to be one priority. I have to say that we did pass a bill last year that got overridden, that got vetoed by the governor, and I think we're going to have to override it this year, which has to do with funding a drug affordability board that we set up. And I think his reasoning was that even though it saved a whole lot more money than it cost, it did have some cost, but now I believe it's got no cost to the state. And actually, that's the way it was set up. But I think that we're going to override that veto, and I think it's going to be very important because it's going to help people pay for their prescriptions as we go forward.
Okay, great. Delegate Terry Hill.
Yeah, so again, thank you all for putting this together and for making it fun. So I
sort of.
two of the bills that I'll, actually 3 bills, but 2 that I'll mention now that I'll be introducing come out of the Attorney General Brian Frost's Access to Justice COVID-19 Task Force, which was set up essentially to look at how particularly people in marginalized communities were faring during COVID-19 and what kind of changes in our legal system might be made to help folks from what surfaced during this pandemic, as we found out a lot of problems became much more apparent. And I served on the Life and Health Planning Committee. So the 2 that I think are most germane to this group is a bill to ease the ability for heirs to claim homeowners tax credit. So we'll be working on that. That came out of the group, receive homeowners tax credit to reduce the amount of real property taxes that estate heirs would otherwise be required to pay. And the second one that I'll mention is a work group to study whether transfer of death deeds should be modified or the process modified to allow real property to transfer to the beneficiary automatically upon death. And these were issues that came up because of the physical distancing, the fact that so much had to be done online. It was very difficult, particularly people of low resources, to handle some of these end-of-life property management estate issues. And we want to make sure that we can make that process simpler and cleaner without sacrificing any of the safety concerns that we have in transferring property.
Great,
So,
thank you.
for now.
We have 3 more. We have Senator Gazzoni, Councilperson Deb Young, and then David Youngman. Before we hop to that, I just want to let everyone know, I do see your questions popping up.
Not a question. I haven't been included in your.
Oh, yeah, sorry, sorry. Yes, I have you on the list too. I just want to let everyone know that I see your comments in the chat, and if our elected officials are not answering you directly, we will say those questions out loud.
Those are the exact questions I was going to address. So,
okay, so
when
great.
it's my turn.
All right, so Delegate Kittleman, why don't you start us off then?
Okay.
Sorry about that. I had just Lisa May still in my head from earlier. I apologize.
I have I feel a little bit overwhelmed, sort of like a thorn among roses. My biggest interest, and it has been growing ever since I've been in the legislature, is education in the state. And I noticed the comments from the people who are watching, and that was what I was going to address anyway. I am fortunate to live next door to most of my grandchildren, so I've watched on a daily basis how this virtual learning goes. And my whole question goes back to following the science. When CDC back in April and then again now has said kids need to be going to school in person, or at least have that opportunity. I know there are a number of parents who would not want their kids to go, and I think they need to have that choice. But they're talking about safety. Somehow when a pandemic hits, we are all focused solely on that. And while that's not inappropriate, there are other things that provide a danger. And if you read what the CDC has said, you see that there is physical danger of not allowing kids to be going out and socializing at all, particularly parents who only have, one child. My grandchildren have siblings, and they have not been as deprived as a lot of kids. But there was an article recently about a young man who was 14 and committed suicide because of the lack of the socialization. So there is a serious physical damage potential for not allowing children to go to school. So that is a huge issue for me. And I think one of the other things that I know I'm complete disagreement with my compatriots here, but I think that the pandemic has shown that when you have a monopoly of K through 12, public schools only, you do run into issues when something like this happens. And for me, it is an equity issue. I have money, not a lot, but I have more than some. And there are a whole lot of people in this county who have plenty of funds to send their children to whatever school they want to. They want their kids to be able to actually go in person to school. They can find one and they can do it. You're talking about the inequities for the kids who are from families that don't have that kind of money, that don't have access to anything but what the state says that they have that they can do. If they're stuck at a bad school, if they're stuck at home, there is no choice for them. And I think that we have got to open up the education system, not because the public education system in Howard and Carroll counties is phenomenal, but that is not true in many of the places in this state. And parents and kids need to have options when things like this happen, or just in general to get their kids educated. So I'm not sure exactly what legislation will be introduced, but there will be some, hopefully, trying to give parents a little bit more choice.
Great, thank you. Senator Gazzoni?
So 100% chance I'm going to talk about the budget, right?
Yeah.
So look, every one of our delegation has talked about something that on some level costs money. I actually even had one of the delegates text me in the middle of this, lobbying me for fundings for one of the projects that were mentioned. The reality is that all of these things are hugely important to protect our values and the way in which we move forward, and how we live and how our citizens live. And managing all of that is probably enough for me to focus on. And that's what I'm going to try to do, and to try to create the framework for how we move forward financially as a state. And that I hope includes not simply plugging the holes, but actually figuring out a way to focus on really helping the people who have gotten hurt the most in all of this, and ensuring that that framework is developed for as we come out of it, that we come out of it as healthy financially, and as healthy as citizens to move forward with our lives. So it's a big thing, but it's all I live, breathe, and think about.
Great, thank you. Council Chair Young?
Well, I'm not the council chair any longer. Now I'm the vice.
2020, former
I'm the vice of everything, don't forget, okay? But first and foremost, I want to say, what an incredible Howard County delegation we have. I'm sitting here listening to this and cannot believe how many various things you all are pursuing, from healthcare disparities to reforming the election, to education, small business, environmental concerns, opening up our schools, gun safety, the budget. It's just, it's really wonderful for me to hear how involved and how active and how concerned you are about not just what's going on here in Howard County, but what's going on around the state. And I really, really appreciate all of your hard work. So thank you to our Howard County State Delegation. So proud of you guys. You are just really fabulous representatives of our great county. In terms of where I think we'll be focused, or where I will be focused, and I don't think really our county council has much choice. We have a general plan that's coming up, and for the 1, 2, 3, 4 of you who used to be on the Howard County Council, you know that that's a really big deal, and it takes a lot of time, and we will be very focused on planning 10 years out. We also have the Housing Task Force, which Allison, you mentioned, which will come into play in that general plan, as well as the Racial Equity Task Force, which has a housing subcommittee. And I lurked on their meeting last night, and they have a lot to say about racial equity in the housing arena here in Howard County. And I think that these are issues that will be very front and center in Howard County, as well as our budget. Our budget is always a big deal, just like it is for all of you. It's a 2-3 month process for us, where we spend a lot of time talking about county priorities and how we're going to move ahead. And it will be challenging, but I'll make the pitch right now to our wonderful Howard County delegation. Any money that you can bring back here to the county level, we will be incredibly grateful for. Thank you, Eric. Yes, and safe and sound. You go, Courtney. Okay, we could really use that. Whatever, and I hope it was you who was lobbying Guy, by the way. I don't know if it was. Okay. So yeah, we can use any assistance that you all can bring back. So again, thank you, Allison, for putting this on, and thank you to our county delegation for being such wonderful representatives for all of us here in Howard County.
Thank you. I don't want to take the credit for this. Lisa May is the brains and all the operations behind this. So love Lisa.
And apparently half the panelists too.
Yeah, I was going to say,
yeah.
you were here like 5 times this morning.
Yeah.
So. All right, well, we'll finish up this round of questions with Councilman Young. I know he doesn't usually have a lot to say, so he'll be brief, I'm sure.
Okay, so I'm chair of the liquor board again, and we'll be doing what we need to do this year to extend, to make legal this expansion of outside dining and alcohol delivery, the things that we've enjoyed during the state of emergency that without action will go away when the state of emergency goes away. And thank you to Courtney and to Senator Lamb on the Senate side for getting us, all of our liquor laws are for the most part state laws. So we need them to get us the enabling laws done for us at the county level to put that in place. I'm in the process of working on a fine tuning of the beloved landlord tenant bill. Some of the changes are specific to the one unit landlord or small landlords. And just when you need to provide things to people and the inability to get leases signed at different times in the process. So we're working on that. working on some historic preservation initiatives, and if we have the time, might even get into working on some changes to the down payment assistance program. You know, I don't want to take up too much time, but we heard a lot about public schools from the delegation, and I know that education is mostly a state level. Despite Howard County's affluency, we're a public school community. I grew up in public schools. You look at Baltimore County, it's very different, and some other places. The number of friends I have that are 15 years younger than me that have the means that are leaving the school system permanently is it's got me really, really concerned. And from a real estate standpoint, every house we've sold over the last 10 years plus has come with a Howard County school system premium. And, you know, we heard a lot about funding and inequities and kids falling behind and kids in emotional distress and not being able to find out what's going on at home. And yet we have a Board of Ed that for the most part is celebrating not getting kids back to school. A lot of that gets solved if we get kids back to school. Places all over the country, even in far worse COVID areas than ours, have figured out a way to do this. To the extent that any of you can lean on, can help, can support, can try to find ways to help our school system get schools back, I would be greatly appreciative. I think our Board of Ed just needs your help. They just need help. So please, I know that wasn't a legislative priority of mine, but I heard a lot about the challenges of not being in school in this call, and I'd like to work on getting them back. So that's it. Thanks, Allison.
Thank you, everybody. And I want to thank our entire delegation, all of our council people and senators, just for always being accessible to us. Please let us know during the session if you guys have any questions, issues that we can help you with. To finish up, I think most of the questions have been answered in the chat. So I think Vivian may have had a question.
Allison, Robin actually has a question in the actual Q&A.
Okay. All right, and Eric just responded to something. I feel like, I actually think that Senator Gazzoni touched on this in the beginning. Are there any discussions about relief through making the unemployment tax-free at the state level?
I mean, there's discussion about it, but there's a $100 million price tag on it. So
yeah,
it's not a simple discussion.
Right. All right, well, let's, if anybody has any additional questions, please feel free to put it in the chat. In the meantime, we'll finish up with something fun and then you guys can jump off. So
we actually have something else starting right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I do. I don't know if everybody's on it, but
I think
right, and I have to.
A lot of you do.
So now, Allison, I just want to add one more thing. Yeah, I do have to go too, and it's just something maybe for next year. Talk about the budget and things. I think it's important that all of us, all the attendees and all of us remember that the 2017 federal tax bill has the middle class tax breaks set to expire in a few years. So as we're looking at, you know, all of the things, we also want to see how federal effect is going to filter down, and that's already baked in, and Congress is going to have to figure out if they're going to do something about that too.
Right, thank you. Yeah, and I know our National Association of Realtors, you know, we're one of the largest lobbying groups, and I know that they're always on top of a lot of the federal issues that trickle down to us as well. But we'll
just real quick, now that you're mentioning taxes, because I know it's always important to this organization, is the sales tax, real estate related, and you know, I know we had a good discussion about it last year. But just to be clear, and I can only obviously speak for myself, but I personally have really no interest in that whole area right now. It is a last kind of resort in the worst of situations, and I would not expect it to come back.
Okay, great. Yeah, that was,
Thank you.
yeah, one of our last lobbying issues before pandemic struck. So thank you.
Yep.
Does anybody else have anything additional? And then I think we'll just let everyone go because I know you all have other things to get to.
No, thank you for having us.
Thank
Thanks.
you for joining us and
Thank
for
you.
being flexible.
Thank
with
you.
time
Stay
and all
safe,
that.
be well,
Thank you.
stay distant,
Wear a
We
mask.
are.
wear masks.
Bye,
Bye,
everybody.
everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.